appointments and things. I had my own deal with the hotel because I stayed there all the time. And a lot of times when I arrived, I needed things like copies or an iron in the room at like midnight, whatever. And when I get there, I get in and they'd say, no problem, copies in 15 minutes, an iron, everything. Like 12:15, I had everything. It was amazing. One day I got to the hotel and they told me I could get those things when the office opened at 9 the next day, which was totally different. I explained I needed them now because I'd be gone by then. And they said, oh, we're sorry, we can't help you. What about an iron? Oh, housekeeping is closed. We can get that to you by tomorrow at noon. I said, I'm gone by then. So then I asked if the hotel had recently gotten a new manager. They're like, oh yeah, he started about 3 weeks ago. So you might be thinking he just changed the policies. But really, as I understood it, I was probably one of the few people with these requests, and no one ever acted burdened by my requests. They just were under the sense of just do it. So I suspect the new general manager brought a new philosophy to how employees should deal with the customers. And this kind of extra service, they just didn't do anymore. They didn't need it. So what's the message I got out of this? The message I got out of this was this organization was becoming less customer-focused and more cost-focused. Notice I didn't say bottom line or profit-focused because most people are always bottom line and profit-focused. They just have a different way of doing it. The big difference is the strategy that they are employing to achieve the same objective. So let's keep going with this concept. This is truly about the CEO or the leadership and his or her personal philosophies. And this is where understanding them could make a difference for you. Are they cost-focused, revenue-focused, customer-focused? How do they see the world and how are they leading the company? So now you're thinking, well, what's so important about this to get a project approved? Well, if you don't speak in management's language, they're going to be less inclined to agree, and they might not even pay attention or listen intently. One of the biggest problems, and this is a huge thing that everyone should be listening to right now, it's really important. One of the biggest problems people face in approaching management is presenting their ask based on what they think is best, meaning what you think is best, not what management thinks is best. For instance, a developer might say we need to spend the additional $100,000 because this is going to help us have a state-of-the-art system for the company. Now, that definitely sounds nice, but what does management hear when they ask is we're spending money that's not required. Sounds like a nice to have, we can't afford it. Management wants to do the minimum necessary to meet the requirements of the project, and of course, they want it done as soon as possible. So adding $100,000 to get a state-of-the-art system, management just says that's increasing costs and time, two things which they want to do the opposite. I lost count of the number of people say in a job letter or interview that they always wanted to work at this company. Now that's great. I think it's wonderful that you want to work there, but it really does nothing to get you closer to getting the job. Yes, the company wants people excited and passionate about working there, but what they're really most focused on is learning about how much money you can make them. Sharing that it's your favorite company, that doesn't provide any sense of what your potential contribution or what you can bring to them. Now, I know this management return on investment focus may sound impersonal. It's not. They do want to hire great people, and they want to give them a great place to work. But remember, management's job is evaluated by how much they grow the revenue and profits of the company. And that's the philosophy that's embedded in all their decisions. So it's all about the messaging. For example, the CEO's philosophy is about customer orientation. I might talk about the need for the funds based on the benefit to the customer. Maybe there were recent outages of the website which increased customer complaints. Then I might justify the reason for the funds around the benefits to reduce customer complaints and increase customer satisfaction. Perhaps the project will save employee time or data storage costs. It's this cost-focused approach that would be most appealing to the CEOs who are cost-focused. Getting the messaging right is a critical element of getting management to pay attention and get interest in your request. By the way, the CEO's way of doing business permeates the organization. What are the CEO's top projects and objectives? What does he or she talk about to investors? Where have they worked in the past? And what did they accomplish for those organizations? What is the internal information you can learn about the CEO's plans and objectives? And you should be searching both internally and externally online to look for interviews in video, printed media, watch the videos, read the articles, learn all you can about the CEO and how they see the world. And here we go back, set up Google Alerts with the CEO's name as well as the company's name. Get the daily email of articles that Google finds. You know what? I have found this a phenomenal way to learn lots of things about the organizations that I do work with, and I wouldn't even know it existed. Sometimes I get this stuff, the organization doesn't even promote it that well, but an article got written or something. If the CEO is cost-focused, then you should be too. That's the message they're telling everyone, that they consider the most effective way to grow the business. If your CEO is always talking about improving customer relationships, then you should be focused that way too. One thing you definitely want to vet is if the CEO's words match their actions. Sometimes CEOs say things that sound good in public, but then they appear to do the opposite. So keep in mind that your definition of customer support may be different from the CEO's. You know, sometimes CEOs will say their customers are first priority, and they back it up with generous refund programs and customer support. However, different CEOs have different definitions. If a customer is dissatisfied, does the CEO support going out of the way to make it right? Or do they say, we'll do something, but we only go so far, and if they're really still unsatisfied, we'll let them go. So you have to understand how they see it, because your definition may be different than the CEO's. So it's very important to look at what the CEO does and says to best understand their definition. And by the way, it's their definition that matters, not yours. The CEO's way of doing business permeates the organization. And those people that align themselves with the CEO's way of seeing and doing things will be best positioned to maximize their success in getting what they want. Believe me, that doesn't mean you agree with everything the CEOs say and do. Alignment just refers to your ability to speak to them in their language. Understand the culture of the organization. A very well-known management consultant named Peter Drucker once coined the term, culture eats strategy for lunch. And basically that states that even the best plans will go awry if they're not aligned with the company's culture. So what is culture? Culture is a set of shared attitudes, values, goals, and practices that characterizes an institution or organization. It's really the unwritten rules and customs of an organization. You know, some people might say that some companies are very analytical and others are very creative. Advertising agencies tend to lean towards the creative side. However, in the world of data, some have become more numbers driven. So understanding the foundational beliefs of an organization, your organization, it's a really valuable way to identify the optimal ways to approach getting what you want. Yes, we're back to messaging because usually the senior leadership of a company is aligned with the company's culture. And your messaging also needs to be aligned with the company's culture. You know, one thing that's important to remember is what you believe to be the best reason to do something may not be what the organization believes. This is really important because you think it makes sense. That may not be what the organization thinks. There may be a different reason why you would do something. It still may justify doing it, but for a different reason. And presenting your ask in the organization, in the language of the organization and management, will get them to say, wow, that's a good point, we should consider it. Presenting it in your language could get them to say, oh, don't worry about it, we don't need it. It's a huge difference because the most effective messaging is aligned with the culture of the company. So if your company is a data-driven organization, then your messaging should be written in data-centric language. If you wanted the 100,000 for the project so that you could hire more developers to meet the original deadline, since unforeseen issues slowed you down, then you need to explain the need in a data-centric organization in a data-centric way. So let me give an example of that. So that 100,000 project, you're in a data-centric organization. So let's see how the language, to give you an example of how we might present this. Well, we recently learned that 30% of the usage of this application was for integration with banks. And the transaction volume of these integrations has grown 75% in the last 12 months to 25,000 transactions per month. Now, our current system has its limitations, and as a result, some transactions have to wait as many as 4 days to be processed. And what this has done is limit our daily financial earnings from invested funds to $10,000 per day. With the enhancements to the application and the substantial increase in capacity, then we'll be able to process all the transactions from each day's business, and that will increase our daily investment earnings to $18,000, an increase of $8,000 a day. And when you take that $100,000, divide by the $8,000, you get a benefit, $100,000 benefit in as little as 13 days. So therefore, the 100,000 additional funds we're requesting would also enable us to triple our monthly capacity to 75,000 transactions, as well as enable us to develop a module that can easily be scaled to as many as 500,000 transactions per month. Now, in this context, the expenditure of 100,000 will not only enable us to realize the maximum earnings each day, but also enable us to substantially increase those earnings over time. Wow, that is an insane amount of information that I'm sure most of you are looking at the screen going, Roy has lost his mind. Where would I ever get this information? I get that. But I gave you a framework for a reason. I wanted to show you that when it's presented in a data-centric way with dollars and cents, they're going to get it, and they're going to say, wow, this makes sense. 100,000 is nothing. We should do this. Whereas if you present it in a different way, they may not get that. So, you're going to say, if you present it this way, it sounds the manager would just say, great, let's do it. Now, the reality is many of you don't have access to all this information. But building relationships with those in the finance area who are the ones who'd be doing this kind of analysis, you may be able to work with them to craft your proposal. By the way, this raises your visibility. Oh, so-and-so in engineering totally gets it. He or she totally gets the fact that we're running a business here and presents whatever they need in a form that demonstrates to us the dollars and cents value, and this makes a lot of sense. And you make friends in the finance area and they help you with this, and all of a sudden, you've got messaging that's extremely potent. But I gave you this example to give you a framework, a format from which you construct your messaging. Now, this is the approach that you can create. Make it easy for management to say yes, okay? The reality is it's not that easy. I get the fact. And it's a little bit of a longer-term play, but building these relationships with people in different areas, finding ways to get to know them, this is going to raise your visibility. This is going to put you in a much more promotable sense. I know someone whose son is in college in an engineering school at a major school, and he's a very unique individual. He's studying material science, which is very technical, all those materials reformulating. But it's very easy for him to communicate with the average person, and when you ask him a question, I'm not an engineer, I totally understand what he's talking about. I told him that when he graduates from school in a year or two, he'll last about 10 minutes and they'll promote him to management. Because he'll be the one person management understands what's going on. So the beauty of what I'm suggesting for you guys folks on the webinar today, building these relationships helps you improve your communication skills, helps you understand how to present this in a way that management will say, wow, this makes sense. And it makes you very promotable. When management says, oh, this guy or this woman isn't just an engineer, they get it. They're a business person. They understand this stuff. We need this person in management. This gets you promoted into a more strategic and much higher paying role. That's the whole idea here. That is the whole idea here. So we've got about 15 minutes left today, and we have an exercise. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a brief discussion of the exercise. You'll need to do this on your own because we really don't have time to do it. This exercise, another big part, 6 rules for communicating with management. We only have 15 minutes. I'm going to go through this much as best I can. So again, the big, huge mistake people make in trying to communicate with management, and it really reduces your chance of success by as much as 80 or 90%. And we're going to talk about that. I talked about it a little before. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. But first, we got to understand who management is. Management is not different from anyone else you want to convince to do something for you. And, great management definitely prides themselves as being as supportive as possible to the employees. But they do have the mandate to maximize profits, and that includes growing revenue, streamlining operations, managing costs, everything associated with growing the bottom line of the organization. But many managers answer to 2 bosses, the one they directly report to, as well as the employees that work for them. And this isn't always easy. It can be stressful. And sometimes you feel like it's a no-win because the boss wants one thing while the employees explain, well, that's not realistic. The boss doesn't want to hear it. They just want to get it done. So how do managers bridge the abyss? The most effective managers spend 50% or more of their time building their network of relationships. And it's these relationships that enable them to access greater resources that help mollify both constituencies. And they have to be strategic and understand what their boss needs before they get asked. They need to anticipate what their boss will want, and the best managers know how to manage up their ability to get their boss to adopt the manager's approach to addressing the needs because it solves the boss's problem. And those same managers also take the time to understand the people that report to them. And a good manager over time learns about each employee, their strengths, their weaknesses, as well as what the expectation should be from them. So it's kind of like having a sports team, right? The employees are the sports team with different people playing different positions. And if the manager wants the maximum goals, he or she needs to create a plan and strategy to utilize the players in the most effective way to maximize the number of goals achieved. Now, of course, this is in a perfect world where all managers do an excellent job and take the time to manage to maximize the goals. I recognize not every manager is a great manager, and some managers have never had any training in management and somehow got promoted because the boss liked them, they were a top performer, or sometimes they were in the right place at the right time. And some managers do manage in a defensive way. They respond to requests and generally do what they think their manager wants them to do. And they're just focused on making sure the work gets done as soon as possible with minimal errors so they can give you 5 more projects. So, okay, what does this have to do with communicating with them? It's very important since it goes to the heart of the big mistake I talked about earlier and at the beginning of this section, and that's talking to management in your language from your perspective. That's not the best way to do it. There's no doubt that most or all of you work very hard at your job and are very committed to producing at the highest levels. You work really hard, you check your work, you want your product to excel against the requirements. But what many people do when they go to talk to management or write a proposal is they focus on their approach from their own perspective. Kind of like talking English to someone in China that only speaks Cantonese. They don't understand you. Even English has multiple dialects. So, the most effective discussions with management are in management's language, as well as in a form that reflects an understanding of the optimal way to present your ideas and proposals. So we talked about what to say. Now I'm going to talk about how to say it. When I managed a team, I found that people would come in to request something, and they start their request in the middle of the story. A simple request for coffee might start out with the history of coffee, and I'm being a little silly. It was back in 1842 when a ship from the West Indies landed in Miami. They're bringing us new food. One would change America. How about, boss, can we get a coffee machine in the office? I calculated that employees on our team spend 5 hours a week collectively going out multiple times during the day to get coffee. I would think it's worth the $100 per month to put back the 25 hours a week in lost work time. Start with a headline. It sets the stage for what you want. You notice in my example, I gave the headline, can we get a coffee machine? And then I supported it with tangible dollars and cents analysis and got right to the point. I'll bet a lot of people in our class would say yes, but if I do it this way, they shut me down. A longer explanation helps me get all my points out and get a better discussion. Not true, because most of the time it just takes more of a manager's time, and they get a reputation. You get a reputation as someone who takes a lot of time to explain stuff. The secret sauce of the request is before you make the request, you think about the issues that you believe the manager would consider important. In this example, the manager would be someone who's frustrated that people are always out of the office when he goes looking for them. So you could change the headline to, hey, Jerry, who's your manager, are you still getting frustrated you can't find people when you need them, as they're always going in and out of the office? And he might turn around and say, yes, I am. You know what? I did some research and I found out where they are. That people spend 5 hours a week per person getting coffee. And you know what? I think it could be cost effective to get a coffee machine because it would increase the available hours by 25 per week for all the employees on our team. Now, the key elements of this approach that are, in addition to leading with a headline, you're focusing on issues that are important to the manager, ones that the manager themselves have cited in the past. So your ask is focused on the impact your proposal will achieve towards the issue your manager's upset about. You're also using impactful data that relates directly to that issue that you believe can solve, and most of all, you're getting right to the point by being concise. This is how you get people to listen to you. Management also wants to see you actually believe in what you're saying. So putting together a great proposal with all the right numbers is not anywhere as impactful as when they ask you questions you easily have the correct answers. Anticipating what they will ask is an important part of the process. Also, being familiar with the issues surrounding the project that management will want is also very important. You know, keep in mind, management also knows how to ask questions to validate their proposal. So make sure you know what you're talking about. There's no flaws, so they're on top of it. Focus on management's top concerns. Speak in that language. So this is the example I just gave with the coffee machine. You know, understanding the policies and perspectives of the CEO, because that's going to trickle down to the entire organization, including your manager. It might not necessarily come in the form of direct communication, but it comes in the form of policies, directions, value systems, behaviors. It permeates the whole organization. Therefore, even communication with your immediate manager and everyone else up the chain of command should be written with the CEO's policies and perspective in mind. Because keep in mind, many times your manager has to go to their manager, who may have to involve other managers. And all those managers are thinking in terms of the company's value system. If you're writing in that language, then it's going to be easier for all of them to see how they will look good supporting your proposals. Your proposal could be used to make many managers look good to their managers, and this goes right up to the CEO. Ask questions to understand their interests, not their positions. You know, sometimes you find yourself in a meeting with top decision makers who are considering your proposal. You know, and it's important to avoid arguing or debating other people's positions. What's very important is to listen to what they say, as you may hear things you did not expect or think about that will need to be addressed in your presentation. For example, someone might say they only want office space on the 5th floor. Don't ask them, why not the 1st floor? They say, well, The fifth floor is a better view, and and you won't have noise. So that's the interest. Why does this position? The position is, that they want it on the fifth floor. But the why of the position is their interest. Why does that position exist in the first place? In the case of the no first floor, it might be in the past a lower floor they were on was noisy and dark. And if that's truly their reason, you can solve that by showing them other space without those conditions. So make your proposal a solution to their problem. Not only will they want to know more, but they might expedite the approval, depending on how relevant your solution is to solving their problem. They fly at a higher altitude. As we discussed earlier, seeing the world in their eyes is the first step to getting their attention. Management usually sees a bigger picture. They want to know how it's going to benefit the organization at the highest levels and therefore have the greatest impact. And keep in mind that with limited resources, companies have to allocate the limited resources against expenditures that they believe can achieve the greatest success in the shortest amount of time. So even managers with less responsibility can benefit from presenting proposals with a larger win in mind. So yes, it may increase the storage in the Colorado data center by incorporating a RAID function and hopefully save us $12,000 a year. Now that sounds nice, but it's not as exciting as we believe we may be able to save $250,000 a year by increasing data storage by 10% in our data centers without the need to buy new equipment. It's currently costing us $10,000 per gigabyte to increase storage, and we expect that this solution could save us $250,000 a year nationwide. But initially, we want to test this in only one data center in Colorado, and if that goes well, we look to roll it out to more data centers with a possible full implementation in 18 months, subsequent to a successful first test. So we took a simple little itty-bitty project that might be considered a nice-to-have, and we turned it into a must-have because it's $250,000. Speak in terms of financial benefit. Companies succeed when they're profitable. If companies consistently lose money, they're eventually going to go out of business or get sold. And C-level managers are evaluated based on financial performance. And that's why it's not surprising that the language of management is rooted in money. How much will it save us or make us? And one of the best ways to convince management is to do so with facts and figures, data and numbers. The most impactful presentations present the most relevant and compelling data to support the ask. Also important in the process is to share the why with management. Why is your approach the best option? What other options did you consider? Can you compare all the options based on credible, objective criteria and show that your solution is the optimal one for cost and time and for other reasons? If you can develop your proposals to always lead to saving or making money, saving time, which is usually saving money, increasing productivity, which could be streamlining processes. This, which is one of the most significant improvements, increasing productivity, is huge. They're going to get more interested. They're going to be inclined to give you approval. Also, managements can be impatient. But don't forget the old saying, time is money. Everything is about getting it done as soon as possible for the least amount of money. Keep in mind, management has a lot on their mind and a lot to solve. And keep in mind, if you get an audience with senior management, don't be offended if they appear to be direct and in a rush to leave. They obviously believe your project's important enough or they wouldn't be spending any time with you. But they're thinking of 50,000 things in their mind, and they want to address and solve this issue in as little time as possible, as best as possible, so they can move on to solve the others. So it's not about them being impatient with you. They got 100,000 things going on, and if you present your stuff in a credible, potent way, they're going to get interested. So let's get a quick wrap up. We have about 1 minute, and I'm speeding through. I apologize. We just have so much to do, and I guess we may need more time in the future. So hopefully now you have a better sense of how to approach communications at work and to maximize your ability to get what you want. We've talked about the language of management, how they think, why they think, that way what their objectives are and the optimal way to get their attention. And remember, the first step is to ask yourself what you want and why. Do you want them to improve a project, greater resources, a raise, a promotion? But regardless of the reason, you need to find a way to present it that gets management interested. You need to present it in their language, the language of your management. And one of the things that can help you building up your reputation provides greater leverage in the form of credibility and respect. And I talked about a whole bunch of ways to do this, joining cross-disciplinary teams, projects participate in, anything you can do to get exposure to other people. Even doing impactful projects at nonprofits. Just make sure you're using your skills, and that will also help you raise your credibility both inside and outside of your company. Another great way, don't forget, take on those projects no one else wants to do. You will be impressed when you win on a project that management's paying attention. So that's another great way. And don't forget, do lots of favors for people. Be the fixer. And very important, ask yourself, what is the value of the project to the organization? So I know we're coming down the home stretch here. I'm getting happy holidays. So at the end of the day, understanding how to present it in a way that management, in the language of management, based on the value to them, the culture of the organization, and from the perspective of the CEO. Because it's this foundation. It's going to, understanding of the main management objectives, profit maximization, growth and revenue growth, to help you develop your messaging and create impactful and effective communications. But don't be discouraged by management's responses. You may not be speaking exactly in their language, so you want to make sure you can do that. And the closer you speak in their language, the better receptivity you will get and the more it will resonate. So I guess we're at 12:02. I guess we got to end it. I apologize we didn't get to all the questions. Had a lot